Hello everyone, this is Lon here with something a little bit different here on my channel because I'm here to watch and react to and give my opinions and all that about Fields of Verdun, Sabaton history. I'm a big fan of Sabaton. I'm gonna say that. I have multiple of their albums, I've been listening on them for many years, and the only live concert I've been on in my entire 35-year-old life was a Sabaton concert. It was a couple of years ago on in Gothenburg. It was really awesome. I will say that was dude, that was epic. And I just really love Sabaton because I mean I'm a metalhead. I've said that many times before in the past. I love rock, metal especially, and Sabaton really hits into that. And not only that though, because Sabaton sings about history, you know? And what I really do like is that they don't just see like, oh, this thing, we're gonna sing about that. They actually do a lot of research for their songs and all of that, you know? And I think that is amazing because it's like history lesson combined with really epic music. And for example, Fields of Verdun is about the Battle of Verdun in France. I haven't read too much about that. I know though it was the big, this like 300 years, 300 days of trench warfare between France and the German Empire. And it was awful, like just brutally awful. And yeah. And I have more videos I'm gonna check. Nana suggested these, so for today though we start with one, and I am curious to check these out because, as I said, I love history, I love Sabaton, I love music. So let's learn a little bit more about this, shall we?
The Battle of Verdun was the longest battle of the First World War, lasting over 300 days, and yet the attacking German army was unable to break through that symbol of French national pride.
And our song Fields of Verdun from our upcoming album, The Great War, is about that battle and the French slogan of courage, they shall not pass.
That's like Gandalf, if Gandalf was French. You shall not pass, French dialect. And it's also fun to hear Joachim, the singer of Sabaton, talking, because you really hear the Swedish accent he has. Oh gosh, that's so funny. But yeah, and that is something also I want to bring up before we start continuing this, is that how many times you hear like the French type of war is like giving up, you know, like, oh, waving the white flag instantly. But yeah, I don't even know where that come from, because I mean, considering like the world wars and all of that and many other places in the world, France have been like one fucking heck of a group of people to like standing firm, like, well, fuck this, guys, like, sacre bleu, blam, wee. I guess it's because I can only imagine it had to do that there are people that think that French is a sissy language for some reason, which is, I think is weird, because I think it's like, damn, bro, I want to learn French.
Mindy Nidell.
And I'm Joachim from Sabaton, and this is Sabaton history.
Now he's going to tell you a little bit about the song and the album, but I'm going to give you a little Verdun history lesson.
In late 1915, German Army Chief of Staff Erich von Falkenhayn was looking up and down the map of the Western Front. It had been more than a year since the stalemate and trench warfare had begun there. This is during the First World War. The home front was already suffering under the naval blockade, and he feared a war of attrition that the German Empire could only lose. He needed to go on the offensive. To Falkenhayn, the weakest point of the Western Front was the British sector.
Ah, well, they're British. Though, damn, dude, looking at this, you see how I'm not jealous of Germany here. I mean, considering that, what a big line they need to have to, like, fight on, you know, because that is something. The bigger the line you need to fight over, the thinner it becomes. Sorry, my cat demanded attention. Unlike warfare, no tactics works against her. She really demands. But yeah, so the bigger the front line, the thinner the army tend to be. I learned that from Total War and many other games, and history.
And attacking at Artois could, he believed, lead to a decisive breakthrough that would collapse the whole Western Front. But he'd learned the hard way that without eliminating or at least tying down the French beforehand, the defense would be too strong. So, to deliver the blow in the north, he would attack at a place further south that would draw in as many French forces as possible. It must be a place the enemy could not afford to lose for strategic or propagandistic purposes and would thus fight until wiped out. Such a place was Verdun. Verdun was not Falkenhayn's first choice, since it was a heavily fortified area. But it was also a commanding location. By capturing the heights east of the River Meuse and loading them with artillery, the Germans could constantly threaten the city and the local defenses, forcing the French to continuously attack the German defenses. The French would be tied down, and if they lost badly, the British would be forced to intervene. In the best case, they would hastily execute an offensive at the Somme, suffer heavy casualties as well, and open themselves up for a decisive German counterattack. Falkenhayn concluded that if Verdun was successful, there would be peace before the summer of 1916.
About that. But my god. It's kind of scary to think about it. I mean, when I'm playing video games or reading history, like, oh, the offensive movement and the strategy and stuff like that, you think like, oh man, that's history or it's a video game. But when you think about it, there's so many people and so many people dying over this. It's awful, man. Damn, bro. And seeing how the Battle of Verdun went, it seemed like the German army didn't really got what they wanted with that.
The key to the attack was heavy artillery. Total destruction, then attack battalions and pioneers storming the hills in a wedge toward the mighty fortress of Douaumont, taking the remnants of the other fortresses that were surely destroyed by the heavy bombardment. Preparations were made over the winter, massing artillery pieces of all calibers and millions of shells. The attack was planned for February once the weather cleared. On the 21st of February, the bad weather finally cleared, and German aircraft and observation balloons hit the skies. At 7:12 a.m. came the order to attack. The largest concentration of guns in history to this point opened up in a violent concert, described by witnesses as the Symphony of the Devil. Even in the Vosges, near the Swiss border, could be heard the thunder of the German guns. In an intensity never seen before, the barrage destroyed whole forests, blowing trees meters high into the air and raining stones and earth on the poor souls on the ground. Some soldiers were simply obliterated, torn apart by the force of the guns. Others were buried alive deep in their trenches or bunkers. Then the German combat troops emerged from the saps with grenades, wire cutters, and flamethrowers.
Oh my god, flamethrowers as well. Dude. Yeah, that it's a reason why flamethrowers is not allowed in the Geneva Convention any longer, you know? Dude. I mean, seriously. Dude. It's just so brutal. Like, holy shit. I mean, to be fair, if I was in that place, and I wasn't, obviously, I'm here right now, but if I was there, I probably would be like, yeah, if this gonna happen, just wipe me out indirectly, you know, instead of like bury me underground from the forces or being burned by fucking flamethrowers or poison gas or whatever, you know. Then a fucking shell like blow me up instantly, and then it's over. It sound most mercifully like, God. I always amazed how cruel and effective, not always, but effective humans can be at destroying each other, you know? We're creating such immense, awful weapons to kill each other, like, and many times it's for nothing when you think about it. Oh, we want this land or we want this thing, and then they sacrifice so many, generally young men, that are like, okay, our government's told us to go there and fight, I guess. And you know, they won't be the one that reap any of the good fruits from that war, so to speak. My God.
With the advantage of surprise, they stormed the first French lines. Through ice, rain, and snow, the soldiers fought as rifle shots and grenades burst in their midst. Trench after trench, the Germans gained a foothold, despite fierce resistance from well-camouflaged French machine guns and blockhouses. Thing is, for French Army Chief of Staff Joseph Joffre, Verdun wasn't that important, at least militarily. If the Germans could not be held on the east bank of the Meuse, the French would retreat and build new positions on the western bank. This was what Falkenhayn feared. But Aristide Briand made it perfectly clear that losing Verdun was not acceptable. Not only would the psychological effect be disastrous for the French public, it would undermine trust in the current government. And if Briand lost his job, so would Joffre. So giving up Verdun was out of the question. This is exactly what Falkenhayn had hoped for. However, though the Germans advanced the first weeks, it was not nearly as far as Falkenhayn had calculated, and the French had brought in reserves and Philippe Pétain to lead the men. The most important heights were still far away and under French control, and taking the fortress of Douaumont was the key to those heights. Unlike the big fortresses in Belgium that had quickly fallen to modern heavy artillery at the beginning of the war, the French had used a stronger special concrete for Douaumont that just would not break. And the fortress soon seemed like an island in an ocean of fire and shrapnel. Small platoons of German soldiers that crept towards the fortress in early March found that it was actually mostly empty. And the strongest fortress of Europe was thus taken by a German officer with a pistol and a lot of guts.
Well, that's gutsy indeed. Goddamn, bro. I mean, it was mostly empty, but still, going forward to do that. My God. Dude. It's insane.
Fort Douaumont is for many the symbol of the Battle of Verdun. The Germans celebrated its fall, but Douaumont was a trap for the men inside. Every direct artillery hit...
Oh yeah. Wasn't there like a big trap they had in Verdun at some point where they like had full with explosives and blow shit up or whatever it was? Was that it in this place?
It put out the lights, and the men cowered in darkness for days, living in their own waste, sharing their food with rats and lice, while the stench of the dead and the screams of the wounded haunted the long corridors.
Oof.
But you know, this was actually still better than soldiers outside the fortress walls had to endure in the meat grinder that was Verdun. The French just had one supply road out of range of German artillery. Only trucks for military purposes were allowed to use that road, and soon over 3,000 trucks a day were bringing men, ammunition, and supplies up the road. If one broke down, it was simply pushed off the road, which became known as the Voie Sacrée, the Holy Road. The German offensive began to drastically lose speed. The whole area of Verdun had become a maze of trenches and shell holes where death was always near. I mean that literally. This is only an area of 30 square kilometers, and the death toll grew to the hundreds of thousands. The name Verdun became synonymous with the mechanized death of the First World War.
Yeah, dude, that's off. I mean, and just imagine one road was so important to be able to deliver, because that's the thing. If an offensive or a defensive situation, and you lose the possibility to deliver supplies to that area, you know that they gotta be screwed, man. That was the problem, I think it was with Nazi German when they were trying to take like Stalingrad and stuff like that under Second World War, because the supply line was at points really bad, so they didn't get as much resources that they actually needed. And yeah, it's just god damn, bro.
but it really bound the French together. Pétain had ordered a new rotation system where no soldier was supposed to stay longer than 10 days in the front lines before being rotated out. This meant most soldiers in the French army had gone through Verdun.
Man.
By April, the lack of progress was turning the whole idea of the Battle of Verdun into a farce. The more reserves Falkenhayn committed to the operation, the fewer he had ready for the real attack against the British. So Falkenhayn had to choose: stop the offensive and defend the gains that were made, or keep going with the offensive but with all available forces. Half measures were now unacceptable. He would keep up the offensive. As June arrives, Falkenhayn officially declares bleeding dry as the main aim of the offensive. But bad news now also arrives. Russian General Alexei Brusilov launches his offensive on the eastern...
Damn, that's a fancy mustache he has there, man. I wish I could get a fancy mustache like that. I can't.
front. It is a spectacular success, and Germany's ally, Austria-Hungary, might be knocked out of the war. German reinforcements bound for Verdun must instead head east immediately. And more bad news, the French now have air superiority in the west thanks to the new Nieuport 11 planes and air-to-air Lancier rockets. Time seems to be running out for a German victory at Verdun. Falkenhayn launches what he hopes is the final attack towards Fort Vaux and the heights around the village of Fleury. On the 7th of June, Fort Vaux falls. A victory for the Germans for sure. But is this the turning point at Verdun? Not quite, for Fort Souville still stands in the way of victory, and this the Germans cannot take. June marks the limit of their advance at Verdun. On June 23rd, French General Robert Nivelle gives his famous order: "Vous ne les laisserez pas passer, mes camarades," which was later shortened to "Ils ne passeront pas." They will not pass. And indeed, they do not. The French hold out in June. And on July the 1st, the British relief attack begins at the Somme.
Dude, seriously, do you see the barrel size of this artillery? It's like, holy shit. My fucking god, that's some artillery fire there.
The pressure there forces German reserves away from Verdun to the north. With the Russians still advancing in the east, there are no options for Falkenhayn available. He must dig in at Verdun as the three largest battles in history to this point all rage simultaneously.
My god.
But by August, Pétain has a 7-to-1 advantage in artillery, and the German positions are pounded day and night. And as if things aren't bad enough, Romania joins the Allies. A new front and hundreds of thousands of new enemies emerge overnight for the Germans. Falkenhayn has lost the confidence of his Kaiser and then loses his job. Paul von Hindenburg and Erich Ludendorff take over running the German army. That, of course, does not mean that the battle is...
Ooh, thanks for subscribing. But yeah, dude. I mean, more enemies and the three biggest battles in history of that time at the same time. Dude, bruh, that's gonna suck.
Over, but it is France's turn to attack. Pétain brings in two 40-centimeter caliber railway guns to fire 900-kilo shells. That's around a ton each on Fort Douaumont, which finally cracks.
My fucking god! Dude! Holy shit, the size of... Oh my god. Oh no! Jean-Paul accidentally dropped it on his foot. Okay, what do? We can't move it.
8 months after its fall,
Damn, bro.
the French retake the fort in early November, and their counterattack is relentless. What the Germans captured over months of fighting, the French now retake in mere hours. By the end of 1916, the front lines are nearly back where they were in February. For a few kilometers of land, hundreds of thousands of men have died. The Battle of Verdun lasted 303 days and nights. Estimates of the total casualties run as high as 1 million men, though it was likely closer to 700,000. But still, it was the longest battle of the First World War. And for many of the war's soldiers, it was the epitome of brutal mechanized modern war. Many veterans would later remember Verdun by its smell, the mixture of gas, bodies that lay for months unburied, and the mass graves that were churned up by artillery fire. Corpses that laid for months in the dead zones of no man's land were mummified, the faces frozen in their final expression before death. The soldiers advancing into the forward trenches often had to stomp over the corpses and body parts of their dead comrades. Only the flies and rats thrived at Verdun in 1916.
Dude, that's... Yes, I mean, I also know that it was under the First World War that the term shell shock and stuff like that came from, right? Where people traumatized by the brain of shell shock, shells and artillery fire, and just this feel of death. So many people dying for so little. I mean, of course, thanks to that, the Germans didn't manage to, of course, push and, gain more ground and all that. But still, so many people for so little. It's just very brutal, man.
Before Joachim talks about the song, I would like to spoil the moment with a side note. It has been accepted history for a century that Falkenhayn's intention was to bleed France dry at Verdun, but this may not be the case. Falkenhayn claimed that this was his plan from the get-go, and he wrote about it in his 1915 Christmas memorandum to the Kaiser. However, the Kaiser never mentioned such a memorandum, and there's no actual evidence that it ever existed. Falkenhayn may well have made all of this up as an excuse after the fact to explain away his failure. I did a whole episode about the Falkenhayn controversy on the Great War channel. The link is in the description. And now, back to Sabaton.
Okay, so new album, bunch of new songs. Now, how was it writing Fields of Verdun specifically?
Oh, to be honest, that was one of the harder ones.
Yeah?
We didn't know where to start, from which angle to cover it. I mean, we were stuck in a mountain of information, but then we just thought, well, let's just start and see where all this info that we have now read takes us. And that actually started to work out,
Now, this album, The Great War, all of the songs have to do with the First World War.
Yes, yes.
But is it a concept album like Tommy, where you have to follow a story? Or...
Oh, yes and no. Let's say it's got a red thread you got to follow or something.
Okay.
All events covered on the album happened during the Great War, but they're not chronological ordered.
Okay, so it's a Great War theme without being the Great War concept.
Yeah.
Like if Julio Iglesias, and he does an album, and all the songs are about love. So he's got a theme.
Exactly.
He's got a theme on his album.
Well, that's a good name for it, a themed album, because it's not a true concept where we follow it from the beginning to the end.
Because of this particular part of that themed album, you're going to be doing a few things in Verdun this spring and summer, yeah?
Yes, but you weren't supposed to say that because that's a secret. You never heard that shit.
You never heard that. We can cut it out if you really want.
No,
but,
never.
Okay. Oh god, but yeah, there is a lot of like, oh man, what wasn't there the Walking Dead man and I'm gonna see the Sabaton album. Which songs was on it? Let's see. Oh yeah, they released recently Defense of Moscow. That's also a really good song. The Seven Pillars of Wisdom, really good. The Attack of the Dead Men, that was the one I was thinking of. Fields of Verdun, the Flanders Field, they are just generally really, really good. I like those songs, man. And the Great War, that was what the First War was called in the beginning, by people. Like, it was the greatest war mankind ever had to that point, until Second World War, of course, happened. And they're like, you know what? This is probably even worse.
This is live.
This is wow, we're going live.
Yeah.
Hi, Mom. For now, here is a few seconds of some of this unreleased music from the song Fields of Verdun from the album The Great War.
Fields of execution turn to wasteland from the grass. Thou shalt go no further, it was said.
Even have to.
And that's it for today.
But we'll see you next time and every time on Sabaton History.
I honestly think this image really symbolizes well, you know, the soldier in front, covering their bleeding face, and they just deaf around, you know. Oh god. But seriously, this is
All right, everyone, that's it
oh.
for today. Remember to subscribe to Sabaton History, but also
Already
the
do?
regular Sabaton channel.
There-
Also,
oh, there's a channel
check out
separate.
World War II and Time Ghost. If you want to see more videos like this, there's a playlist. Cool stuff. You want to see it. And also, there's a chance for you to get a special edition of our upcoming album, The Great War. If you go and join us on Patreon. So do that, and do that now!
Oh, they even have a Patreon. That's pretty awesome. But yeah, dude, this was really interesting, I will say. You know, getting a little bit of a history about it, and as well about the song they made about this Battle of Verdun. And it was really like, I am not an expert, I haven't read everything about it, but what I have read from different random stuff at times, and of course now like learning here, it's just the Verdun, the like feel of death. It just it makes me appreciate that I'm here today and not in the 1910s or 1940s, because I would obviously be sent out there. Then again, I mean, Sweden, where we're like, we are playing up here on Ellen. You know. But seriously, this was really awesome. And of course, links to the original video and Sabaton's channel will be in the description. Check them out, because even if you maybe don't like metal music, but maybe like history, I think it's really worth to check out. Or if you're just in for the metal music but not the history, the music is fantastic too. Or if you like both, like me, it's definitely worth to check out. Seriously, this is... and I will be back though, so thank you for watching, see you later, and have a continuous super great day.